Welcome to Movie Film, I'm Carl, and as you can see in front of you, today we're taking on another tier list. Today we're taking a look at the Star Wars tier list, and this is a tier list of the Star Wars movies, of the live action movies. Doesn't include Clone Wars or the Christmas special, doesn't include any of the animated stuff or the Mandalorian. This is just the movies, including Rogue One and Solo in there as well. Now, if you've been to Movie Film before, you will know I'm a big Star Wars fan. The very first video on this channel was the true villain of Star Wars, where I told you who the true villain was and why. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. So the categories we've got in the tier list today, starting from the bottom, working our way to the top. The absolute worst is absolute trash, and you know there's some Star Wars movies going in there. Then we've got okay, then we've got good, then we've got great, and then of course we've got Empire, the greatest Star Wars movie that will ever be. Now, I'm not saying just Empire is going in there, maybe something else will be in there, but Empire is the golden standard, so let's get Empire and put it right in there. But then down the bottom we've got absolute trash, and there's one movie on this list that you know, if you've been on this channel, you know there's one movie going on this list in absolute trash, and that is Star Wars The Last Jedi, the worst movie ever. And if you need an explanation why it's going in absolute trash, you can check out the video in the description below. This is Star Wars The Last Jedi, the worst movie ever, and you'll get my full breakdown of why Star Wars The Last Jedi is absolute garbage. Now, there is one movie on this list as well which I have not seen. Despite being a huge Star Wars fan, Star Wars The Last Jedi was just so bad I never bothered watching Rise of Skywalker, and I still to this day in 2021 have not watched Rise of Skywalker. But I've been told it's terrible, but I don't think it's fair to put it on the list because I haven't seen it. Now, everybody tells me it's terrible. You guys in the comments, let me know where it should go on the list. I can't choose, so we're just going to leave it at the very end. So, starting out with where it all began, Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4. This movie is one of the most iconic movies of all time. Without this movie, we don't get Empire. We don't get Return of the Jedi. We don't get any Star Wars without this movie. And that's why I think it deserves to be in the very top tier. And I know the top tier is called Empire, but Empire for me also means greatest. And I think Star Wars A New Hope deserves its place as one of the greatest Star Wars movies, because without A New Hope, there is no hope for the galaxy far, far away. That was kind of cheesy, but we'll continue on. Now, moving on the list, we've got Force Awakens, the movie which started the worst Star Wars trilogy that will ever exist. Now, I went and I watched this movie in the cinema, and when I left the cinema, I had reservations, and I was saying, this didn't feel right, that wasn't great, but I was trying as best as possible to put a good spin on it, and trying to pull out the good out of it. We got Han Solo back, we got Chewbacca back, we got new Star Wars, we got lightsabers back, and it was a promising, if not uneventful, if not average start. Force Awakens, it's weird, it doesn't quite feel like a Star Wars movie, mainly because it doesn't have the otherworldly stuff in it. You know, it feels like it's just set on Earth. A lot of it's in forests or by a river. For a sci-fi movie, it didn't really have enough sci-fi elements in it, but it did set up some characters where we were thinking they could go in certain ways. I think Rey grew into her role in the movie. Finn looked like he was going to be a badass. Finn and Poe looked like they could have had, two good characters on their hands there, but instead Poe ended up getting destroyed character-wise in The Last Jedi. Finn as well, his character was taken on a completely separate arc, and then Kylo Ren was just a bad guy from the start, a whiny little wannabe. The thing is, out of that second trilogy, I could just put it all in absolute trash, but I would say I haven't watched Rise of Skywalker. It's tempting to put this in absolute trash, but I'm going to be generous, and I'm sure Star Wars fans are going to kill me out there. I may kill myself over this decision. I'm considering putting it in okay, and it kind of hurts physically to do that. Force Awakens, it had that moment where they kill off Han Solo. Now, the thing is that a good moment in Star Wars history when they killed off Han Solo? Now, you could see it coming a mile off if you were paying attention, because the only thing they had for Kylo Ren that could make him a villain in the eyes of Star Wars fans was if he killed off a key character, because his character was so weak and such a whiny little wannabe to that point. I'm debating this way too much. I think we've all just generally agreed it's terrible, so it should be an absolute trash, but I don't want to be too critical and just put all of this stuff down there, but it's borderline absolute trash and okay is what I'll say. I'm going to put it in okay, despite the fact that it hurts to do it. It's going in there. Now moving on to the next one. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I'm sure people are going to think I'm crazy, especially based on the last decision where I put Force Awakens as okay. For me, Phantom Menace is not as bad as everyone goes on about. Now, bear with me. It's not sensational. It's definitely not an Empire level or a New Hope or a Return of the Jedi level. But it's got some big moments and it's got some big characters. You know, this is the first time we saw Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. This first time we saw Qui-Gon Jinn. This is the movie we got Darth Maul, who's one of the best Star Wars villains in my opinion. It also introduced stuff like a double-sided lightsaber. We hadn't seen that in a Star Wars movie before. And it's got that fight scene at the end, which is arguably one of the best Star Wars fights. You know, the battle between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul. It's arguably one of the best duels in all of the Star Wars main films. Also, the pod racing thing, it's kind of loved and hated by some people. Personally, I love it because without the pod racing scene, which I think is very eventful, and it's something unique that we hadn't seen in Star Wars at that point, which I'm always all for, is seeing new stuff within the Star Wars universe. It's something that I think Force Awakens didn't do enough, that it sets it in another world and it gives it a bit more life to the universe of Star Wars. But without that pod racing scene, we don't get the pod racing video game, and if pod racing video game was a hell of a lot of fun back in the day, especially the arcade one you could sit in and drive around in. I think The Phantom Menace has a lot of good moments in it, and I don't think it's as bad as people go on about. And I think over time the movie's kind of aged well, because the longer you give it, the more you can forgive the midi-chlorian thing. And I'm sure people go, no way. But let's just be honest here, guys. You were never going to be a Jedi anyway. And I know that's harsh to say, but as much as we all want to be, the midi-chlorians, it's a thing. You know, we all like to think that we're a naturally born Jedi, but no. As much as we want to be, you need a good midi-chlorian count. I was rambling now. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but I don't think it's as bad as people give out about. I'm going to put it in good. Then, moving swiftly on, we've got Clone Wars. Another debatable one. And Clone Wars, there's one thing about the Clone Wars I like. That without this movie, without the Clone Wars movie, we don't get the Clone Wars animated series. And without that, we don't get Ahsoka. And Clone Wars animated series is one of the best things about Star Wars, in my opinion. And Ahsoka is one of the best characters they created in Star Wars. So without Clone Wars the movie, which does have a lot of good scenes in it, you know, we see Yoda fighting for the first time. All the stuff on the planet when Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, they're fighting the beasts in like the Colosseum type of thing. That was a really cool scene. The Jedi fighting, and you know, Jango Fett gets killed by Samuel L. Jackson. That's a really cool scene. It's got its moments, but it is the movie that has like the most politics in it and kind of drags out a little bit. Again, it's a borderline good or okay. I think it's better than Force Awakens. I don't think it's a great movie. It does have the floating apple scene. That might be why it goes down to okay, for that one floating apple alone. So that's where we are. Moving on to Rogue One, a breakaway kind of from the main line of films, although it's within the same universe. But Rogue One got a lot of things right that the sequels definitely didn't. It's got the Star Wars feeling right. It's got respect for the Star Wars fans, for the lore of Star Wars. It's a good Star Wars movie. It's a well-told story, and it's a movie I watch again and again and again. And for me, personally, I think it's the best Star Wars movie we've had since the originals. And for that reason, it's going in great. If you disagree with that, let me know in the comments below. Then we move on to Revenge of the Sith. The Revenge of the Sith, it didn't quite redeem the prequels. It didn't set them into an iconic level, but it was a pretty good movie. They dialed down the politics, they dialed down Jar Jar. The only thing that was missing was, you know, when Anakin is going around slaughtering younglings, if Jar Jar just walked in and tried to save everybody, and then Anakin just chops his head off with a lightsaber, I think this movie would have gone to iconic status. But this movie is the movie that brought us General Grievous, who again, one of the most unique villains in Star Wars, and it also got Order 66, one of the biggest moments in the history of Star Wars. And for me, I think Revenge of the Sith is actually pretty good by comparison to what came afterwards. If the sequels never existed, Phantom Menace, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith, they'd probably all be down in either okay or absolute trash, but they've been elevated because of what came afterwards. Moving on, Return of the Jedi. When I was a kid and I sat down and I watched the Star Wars movies one Sunday after another, Return of the Jedi instantly became my favorite. Now this movie there seems to be a weird thing with it, where there's like an age line. People of a certain age don't like Star Wars Return of the Jedi because of Ewoks, which is kind of stupid because Ewoks are badass. Tiny little bear type things, mini Wookiees that show that size is no obstacle. They overcome the Empire despite their miniature stature and their lack of technology. They're kind of badass. And then you've got, again, one of the best battles in it between Luke and Vader. There's just so much about Return of the Jedi which is fantastic, and it's going in great because I don't think it's as good as Empire, and it didn't start off the whole thing like A New Hope did. It's a fantastic movie. It's borderline Empire. It's a fantastic movie in my opinion, but it's going in great. I'd put it above Rogue One in terms of great, but I still think it only lands in great, and that might be harsh. So moving on to the final film we're going to look at today, Solo. Solo, directed by Ron Howard. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I think they got their casting pretty good, despite the fact that at some point in the timeline, you know, Han Solo's going to have a serious accident that deforms his face back into Harrison Ford. But other than that, the story was pretty good. We saw some unique stuff in there. The setting of the Star Wars world was really good, and even they brought back Darth Maul. I thought Emilia Clarke was pretty good in it. Woody Harrelson's pretty good in it. The cast is pretty spectacular actually when you think about it. The story's pretty good, but I'm saying the word good a lot, and while I loved it, I really thought it was a good movie. Perhaps not as good as Rogue One, better than all the sequels. It's going in good. And so there we have it, taking a look from top to bottom. Top being Empire, bottom being absolute trash. In Empire, we've got Empire Strikes Back, of course. The category is named after the movie because it's so iconic. A New Hope is the one that started it all, and that's why it's also in Empire. Then we've got Great, which is Return of the Jedi, and Rogue One. In my opinion, two of the best Star Wars movies outside of the Empire category. Of course, that's why they're in there. Then in Good, perhaps the most controversial section of this list, because we've got Episode 1, which I know a lot of people hate, but I think undeservedly, especially by comparison to some of the other Star Wars movies. Then we've got Revenge of the Sith, which is perhaps the best of the prequels. Then we've got Solo, which could be borderline great, as I just said. Then we move down to the disaster area. Okay, we've got Force Awakens, which I'm still debating about. It could be absolute trash, but I'm being generous. I'm putting it in okay. I'm debating about whether to move it down or not. It's still a bit iffy. Maybe I should move it down. Let me know in the comments below. Should it be in trash, or will I leave it in okay? We'll decide in the comments. You guys can decide. Then we've also got Clone Wars. And as I said, I do have a special place in my heart for Clone Wars for some elements. It gave us the Clone Wars, which gave us the animated series. We saw Yoda fighting for the first time. There's just too much politics in it. Even though they dialed down Jar Jar a good bit in it, this is the one with the politics and the one with the floating apple, CGI apple, so, or pear, some type of floating CGI fruit. That's why it's in okay and not good. I don't think it's absolute trash, especially by comparison to the sequels. And then down the bottom, we have absolute trash, Star Wars The Last Jedi. And as I stated at the start, if you need explanation why Star Wars The Last Jedi is absolute trash, there's a link in the description which will explain exactly that. And of course, I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, never going to watch it in my lifetime, so it's not going to make the list at all. And there we have it, folks, the Star Wars tier list here on Movie Film. Let me know your thoughts on the list below. In the description there will be a link to tiermaker.com to this list where you can make your own list. And you can make your own list and even send it to me on Twitter. There will be a link in the description below to my Twitter feed. Send me your tier list of the Star Wars movies. I fully expect people are going to send me ones with Star Wars The Last Jedi in the top tier, but that's stupid. So there we have it, another tier list down. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button just so I know what you're watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and of course if you're new to Movie Film, please hit the subscribe button for new content every Wednesday and Friday. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching.